Okay, welcome everybody to this general committee of January 29th. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 9 o'clock a.m. And with that, Councillor Cloutier, would you mind reading the land acknowledgement, please?
I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty Number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take action towards real truth and reconciliation and support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, harmony for the future generations.
Thank you very much. With that, we do have the adoption of the agenda. I have a motion moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Cloutier. It is recommended that the General Committee meeting agenda dated Wednesday, January 29th, 2025 be adopted as printed and circulated. All those in favor? And that carries. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, we are moving to our exciting part of today's agenda, which is we have a bunch of 2024 Employee Long Service Awards to hand out. So with that, I think the procedure is the CAO and I are going to move over there and hand out the awards, and Deputy Mayor Armour is going to read out each individual name. So I think I'll turn it over to you while we're doing that.
Thank you, Worship, and welcome everyone. So 5.1, 2024 Employees Long Service Awards. 10 years, Greg Pilling.
That's exactly what I was about. There we go.
Staying with 10 years, we have Lisa Spolnick. All right, going to jump ahead 5 years. Colleen McDonald, 15 years. Staying with 15 years, Chris Nagy. Moving along to 20 years, we have our Fire Chief, Gary Monahan.
You got it, right? There we go. Mark.
Change the film.
So the last one's 20 years. Brad Pulinchuk. Welcome, Brad.
Okay. So I just want to say congratulations all the way around again, and how lucky we are. Every person that just walked up is a fantastic employee, and we're incredibly lucky. Thank you.
Before everyone leaves, we'd like to get a group photo of everyone to conclude the 2025 Long Service Awards. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right, with that, then the next part is easy for me. I'm just turning over the next part of the agenda, divisional reports, over to Councillor Schumacher to take over as chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. And we are on to divisional reports. And the first one is 6.1.1. We are in the community services section. Jillian is going to make her way down. She is here to report on number CS 2025-1, the Muskoka Heritage Place 2024 annual report for information only. Please take it away, Jillian.
Thank you, Chair Schumacher. Just a report for information only is our report of 2024 activities at Muskoka Heritage Place. We had another record year with just shy of 23,000 visitors in attendance. So hats off to our staff, volunteers, and partners who make that possible. We're a great team and very proud of the work that we do. Some highlights, other highlights from the report include some of the capital projects that we were able to complete. We had the Sugar Shack, the sawmill, the open air structure, the Muskoka Museum ceiling and LED lighting redone, and the Spence Inn porch. So it was a big feat to get all of those capital projects completed in 2024. We have other highlights included here. We had 5 new programs introduced, including the Heritage Workshop Series. We had the Heritage Fall Fair. We brought back the National Indigenous Peoples Day. We were hosting that event, which we haven't done in 14 years. We also included 2 sensory-friendly experiences as part of the Portage Flyer Train, as well as the Halloween Great Pumpkin Trail event. So we partnered with Autism Ontario. That was our first year doing that. We are also stewards of not only the Muskoka Heritage Place collection, but also the sports memorabilia and public art collection. So those reports were included as appended. And we had a couple of highlighted artifacts that we acquired this year. You'll make note of those in the photos in the report. But all this to say, these activities in this report is part of the requirement of the Community Museum Operating Grant, which is through the Ministry of Ontario, where we receive just over $24,000 in our operating grant. So, if you have any questions, I'm here.
Any questions for Jillian? Councillor Renwick?
Thank you, Chair Schumacher, and through you to Jillian. Thank you so much for the report, and congratulations to you and your staff. The one note that I wanted to just look at, actually 2 things. One was a comment, the other one was a question. The question is in regard to the art collection that we have. There's a listing. Is there a listing online that we can actually look at to see what the art listing is?
I don't believe it's online.
Okay.
I could defer to Jacqueline. She and my colleague Sarah White oversee that part of the collection,
Yep.
but I don't believe it's been digitized as of yet.
Okay.
We are moving to a cloud-based database called Past Perfect. So we've been using that program already, but it is moving to cloud-based. So perhaps at that point it would be available online.
Great.
We do make mention of some of the outdoor installations that are part of that public art as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if I may, there were 31, I think, that are
Yes, that's
outdoor
right,
installations,
yeah.
which is great. And the other thing is just a comment, but Councillor Schumacher and I were at the Portage Flyer Christmas, and I noticed only 349 people attended, but it was minus 20. So
Yeah.
I think your numbers would have been a lot higher because it was a
That's right.
fabulous event. And
Yeah.
again, kudos to your staff.
Thank you. Yeah,
That was
not
great.
not including the wind chill. If you get along the
Exactly.
Muskoka River, it's probably about minus 35 that night.
Yes.
So I felt really bad for the volunteers. I said, well, our lineup is gone by about 5:30, so I think we should probably
we can
make
shut
the
it down,
call.
yeah.
But we had people as far away as Virginia coming for
Right,
that event.
yes,
We'd make it an annual
congratulations.
tradition. So thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald, and then
Thank you, Chair Schumacher, and through you, congratulations. Like to get all the numbers up, but you forgot to mention your increase in revenue. So, and the capital projects. What do you see coming forward with more capital projects there?
Through you, Chair Schumacher, we do foresee the restoration of our #1 steam engine
Okay.
in 2025, 2026. It'll probably be a multi-year project. The boiler alone takes up to 42 weeks to fabricate,
Yeah.
but that would be our priority.
And that's been on our radar for a very
That's
long
right.
time. So, well,
Yeah.
kudos to you. Very
you.
impressed by the
Oh.
numbers.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Schumacher. It's just a comment as well. It's such a delight reading this report, and for all of the reasons that were said. Great to see the numbers up and the revenue up. But I love the pictures because it's a reminder of all of the things that have happened there. And it's such a fantastic facility that we own. And it gets me excited about the future of it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and I welcome you all at any point to come and take a tour at Muskoka Heritage Place. Not only do we have the village, but we have 65,000 artifacts that we house throughout the village and the museum. So lots to discover about your local history.
Any other questions or comments for Jillian? No? Okay. Thanks, Jillian. As chair, I'd like to say kudos again to your team. Again, I've, long-standing participant at that facility, and I love all the school programs you do. And as Councillor Renwick said, that I just love volunteering at that train event every year. The biggest thing for also me as the chair of accessibility is the sensory friendly activities. And we even did the senior friendly activity for the train that was very well attended. And I think it is kudos to our community for embracing inclusion in that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Over, but I guess I get to turn it over to Councillor Fitzgerald. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. All right. We'll get into our first report, Ops 2025-2. Marie and Tina are here, and I have moved by Nancy Alcock, seconded by Corey Clark. It is recommended the staff be directed to take the necessary steps to transfer ownership of 5 inactive cemeteries outlined in Report Ops 2025-2 that are on the town's bereavement of authority license to the municipality. And further, that staff be directed to finalize the transfer of active Christ Church Ilfracombe Cemetery located at 4101 Ravenscliff Road to the town of Huntsville. And further, the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute all documents related to the transfer of the cemetery properties outlined in Report Ops 2025-2. Tina, Marie.
Good morning, Council, and through you, Chair Fitzgerald. Marie and I are here this morning to bring you an update that we have several cemeteries that is on our BAO license that we maintain, but we do not own them. We have 5 cemeteries that are inactive, and we have 1 that's active, and they are all on our BAO license. Again, we do not have ownership of these areas. This is not required to have ownership, but the ministry does recommend to take title of these properties. So we're here this morning to seek direction on if you would like us staff members to go forward on doing the legal transfer of the properties. That's it.
Thank you for that. I'll go to questions. If anyone has any questions, Councillor Cluche.
Through you, Chair, thank you. So on the total cost of this, what's the total cost and where's the funds going to come from?
Who'd like to answer this one?
Okay,
Marie?
so if we have to, it's possible we may need to get a court order to transfer the title of all of the cemeteries into our name. The cost of that could be 15 to 20,000. However, we haven't done any like complete title searching of the properties, but it appears that most of the cemeteries that are inactive are owned by churches, so it's possible we can just get a simple transfer done. If their churches are willing, 2 of them I'm pretty sure we can, given it's Algoma, but there's 2 that are, I believe, united, so it's a matter of finding those members that are able to sign the transfer. And then there's 1 that I'm not entirely certain who the owner is, again, without doing a title search. We didn't want to incur any costs just yet.
Mayor Alcock and then Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald. I know, Tina, you said the ministry recommends this, and I'm sure it was in the note, but could you remind me why they recommend this? Why they think it's required?
So it's just to clear up title. So let's say the fence has fallen down, or we want, a concern comes in and they want the driveway to be properly maintained. We don't own the property, so we cannot do that. So it's just to clear up titleship, is that how you say it? Like ownership. So at least we maintain it where they're cutting the grass, but we also own it. So if we have to do more than just cutting the grass and maintaining it, then it's all on it's our property. So it's really weird.
Follow up, Your Worship, or you satisfied? Go ahead, Councillor Stowe.
So I'm just unclear as to the advantage to owning it. We're going to spend all this money to acquire the ownership. And if we needed to upgrade a road so we can get in there easily, wouldn't the owner say, yeah, go ahead?
So, through you, Chair Fitzgerald. So, okay, so it is recommended, you don't have to, right? So we're just bringing it to council so that we all understand that we have 5 properties that we don't own. So again, if you guys are okay with us just maintaining it, not owning that property, then that's fine. We do have one that is active. We do have one that we sell plots. We do interments. We don't own it. So especially for that one, you definitely want to seek ownership for that one.
Follow up?
Yeah, so I still don't think we need to own it. And I know that we, along with many other municipalities, are asking the provincial government to help fund the cemeteries that we have to maintain. And until that happens, I don't know that I wish to spend this money at this time.
Yeah, sure.
Chair
Follow up.
Fitzgerald, I'm sorry, I wanted to just back up. So in 2011, just to make it clear for the active cemetery, we did take their care and maintenance fund. At that time, the transfer was never done. So staff wasn't directed to transfer the land, my understanding at that time. But we did for that active cemetery that we look after now, we did take their care and maintenance fund, just so I clear that up.
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald, and through you. I think I would definitely have an appetite of owning the active cemetery at the least. I think that one makes sense to me. The others I would be happy to put off. And question, just because cemeteries come to this table a lot and you deal with them on a daily basis, and this is a bit off the topic, but are we seeing less costs going forward due to does it seem like more people are getting cremated instead, and is that taking up less space and are we going to be in a need for more columbariums going forward? So would there be a benefit to owning some of these inactive facilities so that we have more space?
So through you, Chair Fitzgerald. So with the ones that are inactive right now, we maintain them. The ministry back in '78 did do a letter to the municipality about taking the maintenance on of these properties. At that time, staff didn't, we don't know why it wasn't transferred into the township. But for these areas, these 5 cemeteries, we can't do any more burials in them because we don't have any records. So the only one that we can do selling plots is the one that is active right now.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair. And just a quick one, actually, it might not be for you. I'm just curious about the liability. If we're maintaining these, who's liable if something should happen if we don't own the property?
I'm not sure of the answer. I'm not in that department, but I would suspect because we are maintaining it and it's on our license that we would be liable.
So there's a reason why we should probably own them.
Any further questions? Madam CAO, you'd like to have some input?
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald. Just a note is as time moves on, it would become a little more difficult to find the owners of the cemeteries to also do the transfer, which could result in additional cost to the municipality.
Any further questions? Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald. Just a question then, if we were only to receive title for the active one, you had quoted between $20,000 and $30,000 to do, is that for all of them? So what would the cost be just to do one? Do we know that?
That would be, I would say, relatively low. I'm guessing maybe $2,000. It all depends on the legal fees because it would be a simple transfer. They're ready, available to sign the transfer. We just need direction and then our lawyer just has to register it.
Councillor Morrison.
I guess then it comes down to the present value of money to the future value of money. And to CEO Corey's comment, if it's going to get more expensive, I just wonder if you're doing one, does it make more sense to do them all, knowing the writing's on the wall that at some point we're going to have to own them? And I guess the question is, and sorry if I missed it, do we have a substantial amount of reserves should it cost more than we hope?
Marie.
I may have to defer to Director McKenzie, but I forgot to mention too, if we do have to do a court order, it's quite possible we can do one court order for all of the cemeteries. So it wouldn't be like 15,000 or 20,000 per inactive cemetery. We could lump it into one. But as I said, I'm confident that we may not need a court order, but if we do, that could be the approximate cost.
Director McKenzie, do you have anything further to add to that?
I was just going to note that we do have a legal budget corporately, so we would probably draw from that first before we looked at using any reserves.
CEO Corey and then Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thank you very much, Chair Fitzgerald. So the other thing that we will most likely add to our AMO discussions with the ministers is there's been ongoing conversations about transfers of cemeteries. And I think one of the provisions when an abandoned cemetery is assumed by municipality, it should automatically be encompassed in the cost to transfer the land. The municipality should not be bearing the cost of transferring into our own name. So that's something I've made note of and we'll discuss with the mayor.
Can I just ask, are we making any headway with that, CEO Corey? Are we making any headway with that request?
No.
No? Okay. Deputy Mayor Armour.
I was just going to follow up on the same, actually, that's what I was going to bring up. We actually met them at AMO last year, and we were delegating again this year because we had the delegation, we had Bracebridge there and other communities. So it's not just happening here, it's happening all across Muskoka and all across Ontario. So hopefully the provincial government will step up to the plate and help us fund at least the maintenance costs and transfer the land.
Okay, I have, Councillor Stone.
Therefore, I'm not prepared to vote in favor of this until the province steps up and does what we think is correct.
I just had a couple queries, and I know, Tina, you made reference to them suggesting that we do it. Are we mandated by the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act to maintain the properties? That's a legal requirement through the Act? We have to maintain?
Yes.
Okay. So for liability, perhaps there is maybe a reason for ownership. I don't see the benefit, but we don't want to put ourselves at risk, so we probably need to seek further legal advice on that. I'm amazed that when we see cemeteries abandoned by the churches, that sometimes there's a separation of land that is not burial site and it's sold before we take over the church or the cemetery, sorry. And I know in our ops meeting, we had this discussion, and I think maybe there's an opportunity where the town could benefit by asking for those abutting lands to be given to the municipality in conjunction with the active or inactive burial part of the property. Then at least we're not holding the whole bag and everyone's responsible. Because let's face it, these cemeteries, some of them along the way were quite financially well off. So, the church has used money for other purposes, and now it's our responsibility. So I think when there is clear ownership, and it is one of the churches, if we can seek to have all the property, if it's adjoining or before they, just to allow us to compensate some of our expenses. So I don't know how we do that moving forward. Do we have to be more proactive about it? But just something I thought there's an opportunity for us to recoup some of our costs for all this maintenance and repairs, and now maybe court costs and ownership and further liability insurance, which we're going to delve into, I hope. So, Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through you, Chair Fitzgerald. So yeah, I'm in favor of definitely going after the active one, and I'm in favor of coming back maybe with a report on what it's going to cost for the 5, because you guys haven't, if you delve into which ones can be easily transferred, which ones, and then maybe we make a decision. I'm good with you going forward with deciding, but I don't know if I want, because it says that necessary steps to transfer ownership of the inactive. So that's just the steps. It's not the final approval for the 5, correct? Is that what this is about? Okay. Oh, Tina, thanks.
Yeah, Marie.
It's the final step is to go take ownership of these properties, of these cemeteries, so all of them.
Follow up?
Well, I was just going to say, I would put on to amend that do the 1 for sure, and then come back with a report so that we know exactly how much the cost is going to be for the other 5.
Okay. Did I see another hand over there before I go to Councillor Cloutier? Councillor Cloutier.
To you, Chair. I think if we go for 1, we're spending legal money that could cover all 5. So I think if we're doing 1, we do all 5 because it's going to cost us the same amount of, just a few more paragraphs, right? So.
Your Worship.
Final comment for me. I think this conversation's been fantastic because it's sort of, I was sort of supportive of what you're saying, Councillor Schumacher, but I also support what Councillor Cloutier just said, which is if you're going forward with 1, I think there's been a lot of argument put forward as to why you would just go for the whole thing at this time. And so the bundling makes sense. And when Deputy Mayor Armour asked about, are we liable? Yes, we likely are. And it's the dreaded liability that walks in and whatever. But I support the motion as presented.
CEO Corey.
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald. So I think we also have to remember that a lot of these cemeteries have been transferred to us. They've been abandoned for many years. So it's something that's sort of cleaning up some old inventory. And what we're finding now is when churches want to abandon their cemeteries, we're actually having discussions with them. And part of those discussions are that they will help provide costing to transfer the land. So even in the absence of provincial direction in this regard, I think we're in better shape moving forward. This really is just cleaning up some inactive cemeteries that were transferred to us many, many years ago that we do have liability because we are maintaining the property. So I just think that's important for a committee to note.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? So I guess my question is, how do we get, are any of these current ones we're taking over, do they have land associated with it now that aren't active burial properties?
Through you, Chair. No, they're just the cemetery.
Okay, I was under the
There's no-
impression that Boddings Road maybe had an adjoining parcel.
Through you,
No
Boddings
secrets
Road is
here.
a separate report altogether. It's not included in this report. It's an active cemetery that we're in the works of taking over. We need to report back on that one.
Okay,
That one does have a church attached to it. But these inactive cemeteries are just cemeteries. There's no church.
okay. So it's in the report, so I guess we can discuss it. I'm just wondering if there's a way where we can have that discussion with the diocese. Or are they including all of the land in your discussions?
For Boddings Road,
Yes,
if they're including the church and the cemetery,
yes.
that's a meeting we have to have with the diocese again. Because we had a meeting with them earlier
Yeah.
this year. And then we have to meet back with them with the BAO to go over a few other.
Well, my thought process is moving forward that we need to start recouping some of our losses rather than having the churches separated and sell it before we end up with a cemetery that we have to look after in perpetuity. So I think we owe that to our taxpayer to try and do that at least, so. Councilor Cloutier?
I think maybe we should add, I'd like to add that when we're doing the searches for the cemeteries to see if there's anything that comes with, if we can ask about any additional properties when we're doing the searches on top of the cemetery.
Through you, Chair. I don't know if that's possible just because they are inactive cemeteries. We didn't get any records when they were transferred to us. I say in quotes because they have not been legally transferred to us. The ministry did the audit or whatever inspection in the 70s, declared them abandoned. Municipality took over, but they weren't ever legally transferred. So I don't think, and I mean, again, without doing any title searching, it's if we can find who the owners are, then we can have that chat. But if we can't find who the owners are, then we need to obtain a court order.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councilor Cloutier, I appreciate that. Maybe moving forward, we have the opportunity, perhaps not on these five, and there may be opportunity for Boddings Road. Like I said, if we don't ask, we don't know. So I think it's something we need to pursue. Okay, I see no further comments. Call the question. All in favor? All in favor? All opposed? That's carried. Thank you both. All right, moving along. I have moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Stone, whereas by motion 151-23, staff are directed to review the town of Huntsville use of parks and outdoor public places bylaw for light commercial use at 4066 South Portage Road Park and report back. Now, therefore, it is recommended the restrictions for light commercial use, town of Huntsville use of parks and outdoor public places bylaw 2015-25 remain status quo.
Through you, Chair Fitzgerald. So back in 2018, there was a council concern about this park. In 2018, staff was directed to look at methods for restricting commercial use. In 2018, there was a motion carried for restricting commercial use at this park. 2023, council was directed staff to review the parks bylaw. So I'm here today to report back some findings. There's not enough sightline in this area for barges, heavy trucks to be backing in and unloading. It's on a sharp corner. It's a very narrow driveway we have there. We also combine swimming and a boat launch here, so we don't want to add more safety risk at this park. There are many safe boat launches in the Lake of Bay area that allows commercial use without adding more safety hazards. So I recommend to staff or to council that we leave the bylaw status quo.
Thank you for that. And I'll go to questions. Deputy Mayor Armour.
And not so much a question, just a comment. I remember I was the one that brought this in 2018 forward when I was a councillor of that ward. And it was a very dangerous situation. I see some of the pictures actually were ones that we used back then. kids swimming there, barges coming in, disturbing the ground. So I totally support this 100%.
Thank you. Councillor Cluche.
Through you, Chair. I personally have worked there commercially. And it's not a location for commercial work at all. With the amount of trees that are there, narrowness, the road, it's totally unapproachable, and I definitely agree with it.
Any further comments or questions? I'm seeing none. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving right along, moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Whereas Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation is accepting applications for its spring cycle of up to $50,000. And whereas the town's delegation of authority bylaw provides approval for staff to submit grant applications for identified projects on a capital plan. And whereas staff wish to apply the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation to replace water rescue equipment not recognized in the 2025 capital plan. Now, therefore, it is recommended that notwithstanding the provisions within the delegation of authority bylaw regarding certain grants only to be submitted if in a capital plan, Council authorizes the treasurer or designate to submit the grant for the following items: 20 dry suits complete with accessories and rope bags. And further, that upon approval of the grant, all items will be placed on a replacement program with the capital asset plan, increasing contributions for fire from the levy commencing in 2025. Chief Monahan.
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald, and good morning, Council. Yeah, so as we know, Firehouse Subs is a new business that's in town, and they do offer grants to all fire or emergency services, actually, within a certain radius. We've never been able to apply before because we've been too far away. So this is a huge bonus for us. So we're just asking approval to apply to Firehouse Subs to replace and upgrade some of our ice water rescue equipment. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Are there any questions? Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair. This is great, Gary. Glad we're able to do this now. I'm just curious, is this in conjunction with Lake of Bays, or would that be a separate grant that they'd have to apply for?
Through you, Chair, League of Bays just received somewhere around $49,000 from the fall grant to replace their ice water gear. So we're hoping that this will help us.
Thank you, Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald, and thank you, Gary. This is a great, I think it's a great grant that we could apply for. Are there any restrictions or any kind of, I don't know, hoops that we have to jump through once we get the grant? Like, is there anything that that's connected to it that might, curtail what we can do with the money? No.
It is laid out what we can do with the money. We've actually researched it, and that's why we've put it towards the rescue equipment. But there is no money up front. We don't have to. There's nothing from the municipality. It's just strictly a grant that we can purchase the equipment with.
Councillor Stone.
So a question about the bylaw in order to get permission to apply for a grant. I think that's ridiculous. I think you should be applying for grants wherever you find them. All the time. So wherever it says this in the bylaw, let's change that.
Madam CAO, you wish to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the reason that we have the provision with respect to grant submissions is to ensure that what we're applying for grants for offset council approved directives. So if it's identified in a strategic plan, if it's identified in a capital plan, if it's identified in any resolution of council, because it could become sort of a game between what grants get approved. And the municipality can only submit typically one application. So this one, I totally agree. It seems sort of silly that it had to come here, but we are trying to follow the process. But we will take this back to see if there's some way we can still maintain the intention of approving for grants of council-approved projects and not having grants such as this come to the table. Please. So we will look at that. This one was a timing issue. but our team will look at something. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Your Worship.
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald. I think just to follow up on that, to Councillor Stone's point, we might look at delegating this to the CAO.
Okay, any further questions? I have one question for you, Chief Monahan. Rope and rope bags, and I know that through Fire Services Committee, we had discussions about specialized training for certain rescues and that type of thing. Rope and rope bags, are they going to be used in the confined training we're allowed and exercise we're allowed to do now without further training?
So, Jared, that's those rope bags are for the water rescue. That has nothing to do with rope rescue or anything. That was just updating our throw bags that are outdated, and the ropes that we attach to the rescuer.
Perfect.
They have to be replaced.
Great.
Every so many years. Yes.
Thanks for that. No further questions. I will call the question. All in favor? I love these unanimous decisions. Congratulations, Chief. I will now pass the chair over to Deputy Mayor Armour for divisional reports, Development Services.
Thanks, Chair Fitzgerald. This is 6.4.1. We have a bylaw Corey Cruzen and our CBO here. This is a report to do with vehicle for hire. I do have a motion. It's moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Morrison. It's recommended that the draft vehicle for hire bylaw attached as Appendix A to report DEV 2025-9 be approved. And further that the current vehicle for hire bylaw 2022-52 be repealed. And further that the Schedule L1 licensing of the fees and charges bylaw 2024-107 be amended as referenced with DEV 2025-9. Floor is yours, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chair Armour. I just want to make a first note that there was a technical error on the report under the industry discussion. The paragraph that was under that was not carried through when it was published. But I'll make note of what that paragraph noted at the end of my breakdown here. So I just want to note that the bylaw was reviewed both with the bylaw, the CBO, as well as our town prosecutor to ensure that's effective when it goes to be enforced. People are companies are licensed under the bylaw, and then if it comes to it, if there's a illegal or not illegal but unlicensed operation occurring, we were able to proceed with both administrative penalty notices as well as through the POA court system. There's also provisions that are in the draft bylaw that if a company is licensed and there is a violation under that license, we can both, again, proceed with administrative penalty notices as well as under the POA, as well as there's a strike system that can be used within that under that license. And then if the company does get enough strikes, they can the license can be revoked or suspended at that time. We did circulate the draft bylaw, which this goes back to the industry discussion. So we did circulate the bylaw with the current operators within the town. Two provided comments on the bylaw as drafted. One denied providing any kind of comment on the draft bylaw. And then we've also changed our licensing fee schedule to go by the type of or the number of vehicles licensed under each broker, and there's a the fees go up as more cars are on the road, and that's kind of the breakdown I have there. So.
Thanks for that. Questions, Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Armour. Corey, just you made reference to the two other industry businesses provided comment, but in fact they were supportive of the yeah. Okay, that's all I want.
Thanks for that, Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Armour, and to you, gentlemen. Thank you for the report. It was quite extensive, and I did read the whole thing, obviously, just because I'm interested in it. But the question I have, so there are penalties for obviously not following the bylaw, but have you also introduced now an administrative penalty that goes on top of that? which we didn't have before, correct? So it's the penalty for the infraction, let's say, and then there's also an administrative penalty on top of that, which is new.
Sorry, there we go. So the administrative penalty notice or administrative penalty system is the fine itself. So within the bylaw, we still have the set fines, which is the provincial offense fine. So that's I usually liken it to like a part or like a speeding ticket kind of thing, whereas the administrative penalty notice is all within the town realm kind of thing. So we issue it. That person can then, if they don't feel it's fair, they can request a screening with the screening officer, and if they don't like that decision from the screening officer, they can go to the hearing officer. So it's a fine, but it's a different process.
Follow up?
Thank you. Just to follow up, thank you. So then if there's an appeal process from that, then there's also a $300 charge, I think, on top of that if they want to go to the appeal process, through the appeal process.
If I can add and step in a little bit. So one thing to note is we can only, if there's an infraction, we can only go through one process, right? So although they are both cited within the bylaw, it's not like we can write a ticket for, let's say, a illegal or unfit vehicle and issue an AMP process, right? So to be heard, it's one or the other, right, for that enforcement. The other aspect is when you're going through the appeal process, it's not like going to the licensing committee where there's a fine or anything associated with it. We actually have a process that there's a screening officer who looks at, hey, was the ticket written correctly? Does it align with, the evidence, things like that? And then if they don't want, or if they're unhappy with that individual upholding the ticket, then there's the hearing officer aspect that they can go to. So it mimics kind of the POA aspect. However, it's, I don't want to say in-house. However, we aren't requiring to hire lawyers or anything to bring it forward, right? So it's a lot more streamlined process for that. But I did want to highlight, we can't do, you can't have two fines under two different enforcement tools going at the same time, right? So, yeah.
Councilor Morrison?
Thank you, guys. This was a really good read. And I'm curious if there were to be an unlicensed vehicle for hire company operating in our town, what are your repercussions? Is there a governing body above us that could overrule you? Or can you administer fines? Can you shut them down? What can you do in that situation?
So through you, Chair, we can go through with the administrative penalty notice system, issue fines that way. Typically what we do is a 3-strike kind of thing. So if the individual does not conform by the third AMP, we can provide it or bring it to a POA system, through a Part 3 system or Part 3 summons, and then there can be higher fines that way. Yeah.
Councilor Clark?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Armour. Thanks, gentlemen, for the report. I know that these bylaws had been reviewed by our legal counsel before. So how confident are we that these bylaws have been tightened up now and that they can be enforceable and hold up?
Through you, Chair. So we're fairly confident. The prosecutor did review the bylaw from start to finish. We didn't pass on to the providers until we got the final okay from the prosecutor that they're happy that if it does go to the provincial offenses courts, then it would stand up for enforcement.
If I can add to that too, just through the process with the solicitor, we also did a few scenario aspects, like when we were talking about the bylaw. So it wasn't just through this process, it wasn't just a bylaw review. It was also, well, what if, individual claimed this, and kind of tightened up those scenarios, right? So we're hoping that, unfortunately with bylaws, until it gets challenged, there's, you don't know until you're in front of the table. However, the solicitor has said this is a lot better bylaw to stand behind in front of a POA than the previous one. So,
follow up, Councilor?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Are we using the same solicitor that reviewed it the first time?
I would admit that the original bylaw that we were trying to do some enforcement under wasn't reviewed by a solicitor. Not all of our bylaws do get reviewed, but we can confirm that this one was reviewed in its current draft position, state. So, yeah.
Good to know. Counselor Schumacher.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Armour. So when it comes to things like the higher fee for additional, charging a higher fee for persons with a disability, that one's kind of, is it hard to go after somebody? Like, is there some sort of thing that you would need in order to pursue that? Or is it just, word of mouth?
So within the draft bylaw, we've added in a section or wording, I shouldn't say section, but wording to for quoting a price, because that was a report that we got a little bit ago. But then what we typically ask for is if that person is able to provide a receipt that they've hired a cab for X amount of dollars, and then we'll reach out to the company and kind of inquire as far as what a normal rate is, and obviously if it matches what the person's paid, then it's not an issue. But if they charged higher than that, then
And then
Follow up?
If that particular company says that, you're pursuing the fine option and then they say, no, we're not going to then provide that service, how does that impact the town?
I can handle that one. So unfortunately, there is no requirement that if you're a provider, you need to provide that service, right? So that is kind of a threat on the back end. Further to what Mr. Cruzen has pointed out, those violations have also been incorporated with the strike penalties as well, right? So no different than the short-term rental bylaw where, if a noise is a complaint, if you're offering that service and you do charge more, you are risking getting your license revoked for that business, right? So it's kind of a wide brush on, but the nice thing from the industry was really our drivers should be held accountable as well, and this is the opportunity to do that, right? So, yeah.
No, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Not seeing any. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. Thanks, everyone. Good discussion. I guess your gentlemen staying with us. We're going to move on to report DEV 2025-10 Business Licensing Bylaw Repeal and Replace. And we do have a motion with this one. It is moved by Councillor Stone, second by Councillor Fitzgerald. It is recommended that committee approve the draft business licensing bylaw attached as Schedule A to report DEV 2025-10, and further that the current business licensing bylaw 2017-111 be repealed, and further that the Schedule L1 licensing of fees and charges bylaw 2024-107 be amended as referenced with DEV 2025-10. Dylan.
Thank you, Chair Armour. So the draft business licensing bylaw has seen a reformatting in a way. We've added a definition section at the starting that if it's a definition throughout the whole bylaw itself, that definition's in there. There's a definition section each license category that's specific to that license category. We've also added into the definition of food under refreshment vehicle section the allowance for the sale of alcohol as long as that refreshment vehicle is licensed by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. We've also added in a section that limits the number of accessory structures associated with a refreshment vehicle to 1, and the max size of that accessory structure is 160 square feet, as well as there can be no commercial sale from that accessory structure. So that kind of ties it back to either a storage type shed or like a large dining tent kind of thing. Just because we've had, over this past summer, we've kind of seen those variations that way. We've also added in the option for an annual license from January 1st till December 31st, with having informal discussions with some of the licensed operators. They've noted that they would be in favor of having an annual license. Not all operators are annual. but some can sustain operating throughout the winter and all that stuff. But we still we're still proposing the option of a season license with the extension past that if the person does not want to go the full annual license. And that's the breakdown in the bylaw. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Very good. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. Obviously, we all need clarification on this stuff. It was before my time, but I seem to remember regarding the licensing of food trucks, that previous council passed something about something in the downtown core. Is there a restriction on having a food truck on the main street, like, or within a certain few blocks, or is it no different to anywhere else in the town?
Through you, Chair Armour, there is a certain distance between a refreshment vehicle and a restaurant, as well as we've actually, and that's one thing I should note it, we've added in a distance between refreshment vehicles, which is 10, I believe it's 10 meters between, or sorry, 10 feet between each, just more or less kind of safety aspect. If one, God forbid, catches fire or something like that, it's not going to come over. But, and then there's also, we're allowed to have one on one property, and with the permission or authorization from the Director of Development Services. There's a second one can be put onto a property. And then if the second one's going in, it has to be 100 meters away from any restaurant that serves the same type of food. So.
Very good. Any other questions? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Armour. Just to follow up on Councillor Morrison's question. So I know there's some properties where you're allowed to have 2 trailers, but there's no possible way for an event that they can meet those separation requirements. And clearly it's for safety reasons is the motivation. So it makes sense that you have it in place. It seems restrictive, but when it comes to safety, you got to be there.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Armour. Just in response to Councillor Fitzgerald, when the beer fest happens, there is the 10 feet distance between food trucks that are on the, so it is possible to do quite easily, and it's safe. You weren't questioning that, were you? That it was safe to do, or that it was?
I think for a seed event, there's exceptions, correct? Sorry, I didn't go through you, Chair Armour.
That's fine. Who are you directing the question to?
Well, I don't think
Councillor
Ryan
Renwick
can
or
answer it. I think it'd probably be for Corey or Chris. Or maybe we need Greg back in here. But it does happen at Rib Fest or Beer Fest or whatever else. So is the bylaw clear enough or is that an exception through the seat application?
So
Go
through
ahead,
you,
Chris.
through you, Deputy Mayor. We do comment on that process, and I can confirm that through inspection, we do confirm that there's at least 10 feet between the vehicles and stuff like that. So we haven't run into that. You're absolutely right that under this bylaw, the seat bylaw is exempt. So it's a separate process, and it's being dealt with through that. The other aspect and why we incorporated it into this bylaw, previously it just said as per the fire prevention officer requirements, where it's kind of like, no, let's actually put in a distance, which the 10 feet or 3 meters is pretty acceptable because we're also applying that to tents and things like that as well, right? So, yeah.
Follow-ups?
And it's 165 feet in the bylaw for anything that isn't under the seat. For 2 trailers.
For 2 trailers, yeah.
Thank you. Just want to clarify.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to make sure with this bylaw that, are we aware of any current licenses that we had in place for last summer for food trucks on where we have a site that had multiple trucks that might be negatively impacted by this bylaw? I just want to make sure that we're not going to cause people grief that have already had multiple food trucks on a single site.
Through you, Chair. There's only been two sites that were licensed last summer that they would be able to meet that 10 feet between the trucks themselves. And going into the summer, the one site it's going to be the same owner that's going to be doing it, so they're fine with working with what's there, and they'll be able to meet the distances.
Councillor Morrison?
Yeah, just a quick question on the difference between like food trucks for events and rentals on like town-owned land versus food trucks on private commercially zoned land. So like for instance, if someone was to have a week-long event on town-owned land, like a beer fest, you can have 6, 7, 8 trucks. Looking at, for instance, like where the taco stop is on Highway 60 by Three Guys in the Stove, they would be limited on how many they could have. So I'm just curious if that gives an unfair advantage to the municipality when we're trying to rent our land compared to the private owners that are just trying to create a community of food trucks, for instance, or an event or something like that. Is there a discrepancy between town-owned and privately owned land and how many people can have?
So yeah, I'll kind of reiterate the if it's on town-owned land, it would strictly be under the seat application, right? And all of those need to be brought forward with respect to how many they call it stalls are actually showing up and do a plan on that, right? Under this bylaw, up to 2 can be on the property. If they want more, they can always approach council to look at additional food trucks if need be. But really, this is just to license them on private property itself. It's not on the town-owned property whatsoever. So, and there's been similar aspects with respect to, you know, food trucks down at Hutchison or Port Sydney or things like that. That's a separate process when it's kind of the full-time food truck being there, right? So yeah. I hope that answers that. Yeah, perfect.
Any more questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay, you're staying with us again. This is 6.4.3, report number DEV 2025-11, amendments to the consolidated short-term rental bylaw 2022-91. I have a motion with this one. It's moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. It's recommended that the committee approve the amendments to the short-term rental accommodation STRA bylaw as attached to report DEV 2025-11, and further that the bylaw amendments be forwarded to council for consideration. Gentlemen.
I lost one. No. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. So as noted, this is more of a housekeeping amendment in response to some concerns with allowances within the program. Some of these highlights detail the restrictions of bunkies as not permitted as a short-term rental, restrictions with STRs within the principal dwelling on a lot so that we aren't seeing any applications come in for secondary dwellings on as the allowance, right? And then finally a sunset clause on how long we're actually going to keep applications that are incomplete before we deny them. And then further, if I can give a little bit of a kudos to my permit coordinator, because she helped draft these amendments. So yeah.
That's excellent. Do we have any questions on this one? Great report. There you go. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thanks very much. I'm going to turn this over to Corporate Services. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Armour, and buckle up. We have a few today. We are going to start with, let me just get to the proper spot here. We'll start with 6.5.1, Marie Turner reporting on Corp 2025-3 RC/18 2024 HTE fitter OSRA closure 781 Canal Road. And I do have a motion moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Clark. It is recommended that application RC 18 2024 HTE fitter OSRA closure 781 Canal Road receive preliminary approval in accordance with section 6.7 of the permanent highway closure policy development 11, and further that the mayor and clerk are authorized to sign the necessary documents pertaining to the closure and sale of the shore road allowance. With that, I'll pass it on to Marie.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Morrison. So we received an application from the owner of 781 Canal Road with respect to purchasing the shore road abutting his property. The report is being presented to committee because we have received objections from both abutting neighbors. However, their objections pertain to planning issues which were recently discussed at Planning Council on January 15th. The closure of the shore road is a condition of the applicant's CPP application, which was provisionally approved on January 15th at the Planning Council meeting. Thanks.
All right, any questions on this? Councillor Stone?
So just to be clear, when somebody asks for a permit at the waterfront and they have an unopened shore road allowance, it is a requirement that they close that. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. Deputy Mayor Armour?
Thanks through you, Chair Morrison. Just a quick one. I think I know the answer to this already. So the cost to purchase the shoreline also includes, he pays for the survey of the property to ensure that it's what we say it is.
Yes, we need a survey done and then all costs are borne by the applicant.
Good question. Any other comments or questions on this? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. Okay, moving on to 6.5.2, we're going to go to Jessica Boys on this one. Regarding report number Corp 2025-4, establishing an appeals committee. And I do have a motion on, oh. I don't know if I have it in order right here. I have something here on the licensing committee. Make sure I'm reading the right one. That's right. Yeah, that's the right one. I have the right one. Thank you. Okay, so the motion is moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. It is recommended that committee dissolves the licensing committee and establishes an appeals committee that will adjudicate and provide a final decision on matters pertaining to the following bylaws as outlined in Report Corp 2025-4. Business licensing bylaw, discharge of firearms bylaw, noise bylaw, property standards bylaw, short-term rental accommodation bylaw, sign bylaw, and vehicle for hire bylaw. And further that, committee approves the following: the Appeals Committee bylaw attached as Schedule A, the amendments to the 2022 to 2026 Committees of Council Terms of Reference attached to Schedule B, and the Appeals Committee appointing bylaw attached to Schedule C. And further that the Licensing Committee administrative practices and procedures be repealed, and further that all applicable bylaws and amendments be presented to Council for consideration. And with that, I'll pass it on to Jessica.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. And if I may, I'd like to invite Mr. Nagy down to the table as well in case you have any questions for him. So this is something that Mr. Nagy and myself worked on to expand the powers of the existing licensing committee and change it to the title of Appeals Committee. I also want to note there's a slight error in the motion that was included in the agenda. The attached bylaws and the reports reference the control and licensing of dogs. And if we could do a slight amendment to the motion to add that to the first paragraph.
Okay, and you can put something up on the screen at some point for us to review that. Okay,
Yeah.
Sounds good. So do you and Mr. Nagy want to take it away for now, and we'll look at the motion further on?
Sure, that's all the comments that I had, but
Okay.
I'm open for questions.
All right, any questions for Jessica or Chris on this? Okay, not seeing any, so Jessica will put up the not amended motion, but the motion with the proper wording regarding the dog bylaw, and then we'll review that. Do I have to read it again, or I can just read the part that we're adding, right? All right, so should I be reading this as an amendment to the motion? Okay, so we have an amendment moved by Councillor Cloutier, seconded by Councillor Clark. It is recommended that the following be added to the end of the last paragraph: control and licensing of dogs. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. Now, any discussion on the main motion as amended? See, Councillor Alcock, Mayor Alcock. I demoted you.
That's
I
fine.
demoted you just there.
No worries, no worries, I can handle it. Just a quick comment, I support the motion, obviously. But I also wanted to thank Councillors Morrison and Stone and Deputy Mayor Armour for now having expanded responsibilities on this committee, and very appreciative of their time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Alcock. We don't meet often on that one, but we do, and it's yeah, now we will. Now we will. Yeah, thanks for the acknowledgement. Any further questions or comments on the main motion as amended? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. Okay, moving forward to 6.5.3. Jessica's back on the hot seat regarding report number Corp 2025-5, procedural bylaw repeal and replace. And I do have a motion on this one moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Stone. It is recommended that committee approve the draft procedural bylaw attached to report Corp 2025-5 and further that the final bylaw be presented to council for consideration and further that the current procedural bylaw 2019-45 be repealed. I'll pass it to Jessica again.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So the procedural bylaw is required as per the Municipal Act, and I hope you all have it memorized. There's just a number of minor changes to the bylaw, so added some clarification with respect to hybrid electronic in-person meetings. The original draft electronic meetings weren't a thing. I've also changed that the minutes will come directly to council to allow for faster decision making. And you will note we won't be adopting the agenda any longer, so one less motion at the beginning of meetings. Also, we did have a separate procedural bylaw for the Accessibility Advisory Committee, so I have combined those sections. Most of the bylaw was duplication, so combined those sections into the main procedural bylaw, and we will just have one procedural bylaw that will govern all of the committees. I can answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Okay, I just want to make acknowledgement. We're always trying to speed things up and make things more efficient here, and I got to commend not just you, Jessica, but Director Maxwell, Director Frame, and all the rest of our directors. You're always actively looking to make things streamlined. So this is going to help us, and I appreciate that. With that said, I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Okay, now we have a presentation for information only, and it is by Amanda Hill and Lauren McDermott. And it is, oh, there they are. And this is regarding Corp number 2025-8, the community financial requests for 2024. Take it away.
Sorry about that. So the community financial request policy that was brought forward in 2024 requires that an annual detailed report of the grants, promotional items, and waive fees approved through the community financial request program be presented to council. So that's why we're here today, as it's an update on information. We had over $10,000 distributed throughout the community. So I'm going to go through it with a presentation on the screen. And we'll go through it and see what we have supported. So, okay. So within that is the Cameron of Lochiel Pipes and Drums, and they were given $1,000 for uniforms and instruments. The Breakthrough Dance Challenge, which was given $1,500 to help support for a large tent rental during the local Huntsville dance competition. Mary Spring and Terry Howell Sewing Camp, which was given $1,000 for sewing machine repairs and fabric. They were very excited, and they're actually operating out of the library, which is really great. So if you're into sewing, give it a chance. The Friends of Fairburn They put on a talent act for an Italian fundraising dinner, and the Friends of Fairburn are a group of committed volunteers who make up of family, friends, and community members that provide a valuable support to the Fairburn long-term care home and residents. So that's just important to note. The next one is the Rotary Club of North Muskoka. So they received $1,500 for traffic control, signage for the Huntsville Santa Claus Parade. Fairy Lake Association, they received $1,500 for the Fairy Lake cleanup. As you can see in the photo, lots of great work there. They even had excavators, things like that. So really passionate individuals. And then we've got the Food for Kids Muskoka, and they received $1,500 for AV costs for fundraising breakfast gala. The Food for Kids Muskoka, they help to make lunches for those who are in need and don't have food and things like that. So it's a really great initiative supporting in our community. The Huntsville High School Life Skills Program, they received $500 for recreation passes at the Canada Summit Center, and that allows them to integrate into the community and recreation and activities. So we've got a little picture there up there. And then we have the Huntsville Concert Band, and they received $175 for the Huntsville Community Band Christmas concert. So in total, yep, and that's it. Thank you. Sorry, technology. So in total, that was $10,000 provided to the community in 2024. This has been funded through the town's portion of the municipal accommodation tax, and really great initiatives here. And we'll be working on the next round for 2025 intake. And I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Amanda Hill now to describe about the waiving of fees.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Chair Stern or Morrison. In addition to the Community Financial Request Program, we provide groups with reduced rental rates through agreements. There was I just wanted to note about one sort of administration error that when submitting Appendix C, that one of the halls was missed from the appendix. So the Utterson Hall does have user groups that have agreements that have waived or reduced rates. I can quickly read over those ones right now, just because they are not in the presentation. So the Utterson Live Wires have a weekly rental. Their rate, the value of that would be $5,000, just roughly over $5,000 for that. The Muskoka Community Bands, they have 2 concert practices each week, the Kingfisher and the Muskoka Community Band. They practice once a week, and their value comes to $3,200 and for the year. And then there's the Utterson Community Group that they are able to have 6 rentals. They've used 1 this year, and that value's at $331. If there's any other questions.
Over to Lauren, yeah.
Sorry about that. Just jumping back over, we also wanted to mention that $5,000 were also for waiving of fees. So this is for things like room rentals and things like that. So that's a total of $5,000, and there is an appendix as well, I believe. Thank you.
Great, great information. I'm going to go to Mayor Alcock, Councilor Renwick, and Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. I just want to say thank you. It was a really great report to read, and it's one of those that you feel really warm and fuzzy when you read it, because I know for at least half of those applications, we've all been approached by the various groups. I was surprised actually to see the Fairy Lake Association. I know that that's been a request for theirs from them for quite some time, and I know that they put the money to good use, as was presented in the report. And it's one of the things where we can make a difference. This is one of those programs. So thank you for a great report.
Great, thank you. And Councilor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Morrison, and through you, thank you, ladies, for the report. As Mayor Alcock said, sorry, you're demoted again. it is always great to see where the money goes and how, the amount of money that we give away, and that also the granting programs and the waiving of the fees. So there's a lot of people that really benefit from that. The one question I have is in regard to the $1,500 that Rotary received for the closing of the road for Santa Claus Parade. Do we not have signage now that we've just purchased for with the trailer? Was it not in place at the time when they applied, or like why are they paying for equipment that we really have? I thought we had to be used.
Pass that on to Lauren.
Through you, Chair Morrison. So we did not have that equipment in place during that time. This was in 2024. I believe, and I might have to defer over to a director, Randy perhaps, to answer on where that stands now. If it addresses the full closures, I'm not sure. So I will defer over.
Director Bissonnette.
Yep, through you, Chair. Yeah, we didn't receive that. We just received it like last week with the trailer. We did get the signs earlier, but we didn't have the trailer. It's all in the trailer right now, though.
That's great. So that'll help us moving forward. Thank you. Yeah, so down the road, they wouldn't have to pay for it, hopefully. Okay, and that money can go somewhere else. Deputy Mayor Armour, and then Councilor Cluche.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Just a quick one, under the Community Financial Request Grant Program. So can they come back every year for the same grant? Or do you have a way of who gets the grants, who doesn't get the grant, or is it just done by who comes first? How do you decipher that?
Yes, so through you, Chair Morrison. So currently as it stands, the program for the Community Financial Request does not have a restriction or limitation. However, on the agenda today, we actually have a report about the policy amendments that will be up for discussion, and that will be presented by Director Frame.
Perfect. We anticipated your question, Deputy Mayor Armour, so we did a whole report for you. Yeah, we knew. Any other questions from council? Councilor Cluche.
Yes, sir. I just want to point out how this supports our community a lot. Through the junior auditors, they have 6 per year, but they have used 5. And out of those 5, they have donated to La Crosse, one of their free rentals, and also the community living brunch dinner that was donated through the junior auditors. So, I mean, it's a great program and it works great for everybody gets to benefit off it.
Thank you, Councilor Cluche. And Councilor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Morrison, and thanks for the update. I just wanted to say just quickly that this is a great program, and I really like this policy. It frees up a lot of council time where we think in the past how there's been a lot of time spent here at council. And so I just want to say thank you for your work on this, and I think it's made it easier for us. It's also made it easier for the recipients with this process.
Thank you. I concur, Councilor Clark. And the fact that it's coming through our hospitality tax funds, the MAT funds, is a really good use of that fund. And everybody you've highlighted there, they're all grassroots, amazing organizations that really do need funding. So it spreads throughout the community. And having a kid that did do sewing in town, I know that even that is really a really cool thing. I have a quick question for Amanda. So you talked about the room waiving. Do you get a lot of requests? Is that just the ones that you approved? Did you get a ton more than that, or was that just the number you got?
So that's actually done through council and committee. They have agreements with the town. So they'll all come to you.
And again, those organizations that you're waiving fees for are really crucial organizations to our town. So it's great.
Yeah.
So thanks for taking care of all that. That was for information only, so we don't have a vote, and we're done with questions. So you guys are off the hook. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are moving forward with 6.5.5. Director Frame will speak to Corp 2025-9 Amendment of Community Financial Request Policy. And I do have a motion that is moved by Councilor Cluche, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. It is recommended that committee approve the community grants and support policy as attached to Report Corp 2025-9, and further that the existing $5,000 allowable fee waiving limit for 2025 be redirected to the community grants program. And further, that the fees and charges bylaw be amended to include the authority of the Director of Operations to reduce the amount of or waive the requirement for the payment of a roads or transit-related fee, where the Director is satisfied that it would be unreasonable in the circumstances to require payment in accordance with Schedules M1 through M5. And further, that Budget Financial 34, Community Financial Request Policy be repealed. Pass it over to Director Frame.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So this report relates to the underlying policy that supports the program that Lauren and Amanda just talked about. So the policy was originally adopted back in July of 2023 and was meant to streamline previous town programs aimed at providing community grants and other forms of assistance to community organizations. So the goal here is to support as many groups as possible that deliver programs, projects, and events that enhance the quality of life for Huntsville residents. So we now have a year of the program under our belt. And throughout the application and review process, there are a few recommendations that have been identified. So these proposed changes are intended to help make things easier for the community to navigate the program and to help provide for a more efficient process that will allow the town to support as many groups as possible. So there are a few larger changes I'd like to address. So firstly, the name of the policy. Back in 2024, a similarly named community budget request program was launched that relates to our budget process. And the two programs are so similarly named that we even had to include an FAQ on the website saying, are these two the same thing? So I think because of that, we're proposing a name change of the policy to community grants and support, which really more closely identifies what this policy is all about. So next, some specific application limitations are proposed to ensure that the same organizations are not receiving the funding every year for the same things. So this will help disperse the funds to more organizations. So the specific details of the limitations are included in the staff report, but here the main change is that a grant application related to a program or a recurring event can be submitted once every 3 years. So these limitations would absolutely be communicated clearly on our webpage and throughout the application process in dealing with the community groups that are applying. So next, some additional application criteria are proposed to ensure that there's a timely community impact of the funding. So this means that groups will need to apply for funding in the same calendar year that the project, event, or program is occurring. So they can apply retroactively. So for example, the intention for 2025 is to launch the program in early March. For those organizations that may have had an event occur in January, February, they can still submit an application for funding. So if the event is occurring in January 2026, however, they have to submit an application. They have to wait until 2026 to submit an application. So I also think it's important to note that if all of the budgeted grant funds are not fully committed by November 1st each year, the application will be opened up to people or to groups that don't meet those application criteria. So if somebody's received funding in the last 2 years, they can apply after November 1st if we haven't dispersed all of the budgeted funds. The intention here is that we will provide the budgeted funds to community groups. So the current policy also does not include specific financial limits for each application. So the proposed policy provides some limits, which are the lesser of 50% of the cost and $1,500, which means the maximum that any one applicant would receive through a grant application would be $1,500. So this is to ensure that the town is not funding 100% of an event. They should not be relying on the town to offer these events, essentially. The last really major change proposed in this new policy is actually the consolidation of the fee waiving stream into the grant stream. So this is really to make the process much simpler from an administrative perspective and to make it easier for applicants to request funding. So it's also to ensure that funding for the community projects and events is limited to those financial limits that I mentioned a minute ago. So 50% of costs up to a maximum of $1,500. So we actually ran into a few issues throughout 2024 where an applicant would apply for fee waiving, but they hadn't actually booked the facility yet. And it wasn't available for the dates that they wanted, right? So it also gets a little bit tricky when somebody's already paid a fee. that is eventually waived, then we still need to write them a check anyway. So we're essentially just combining fee waiving and grants. So to make sure that, you know, applicants are meeting the financial limits, and everybody's essentially just going to get a check through this program. So it essentially eliminates a lot of administrative time and errors. So with this consolidation, it is proposed in the recommendation that the $5,000 annual limit that was sitting with the Director of Community Services be redirected to be combined with that $10,000 budgeted grant amount that we have already. So there wouldn't be any financial impact to the net levy as a result of doing this. So essentially it means that we'd have $15,000 to distribute to community groups this year. Let's just see here, sorry. So the last change really that I wanted to note, as well as that included in the original policy, were two fee waiving components that have now been removed. So the first is sort of a general fee waiving limit for the Director of Development Services for planning related fees. And this really isn't consistent with the spirit of the policy. And there's actually already a note in the fees and charges bylaw that speaks to that ability. The second is the general fee waiving for the Director of Operations for roads and transit related fees. Again, it's not really consistent with the policy. It doesn't really belong in this policy. And so the ability really should be similarly reflected in the fees and charges bylaw, and that's reflected in the recommendation in the report. So since that's not already included in the bylaw, the recommendation does say that that we amend that bylaw to include that ability for the Director of Operations. So I do know there's a lot going on with this policy amendment. So ultimately the goal here is to make the program more user-friendly for applicants and easier for staff to administer. So I am available for questions.
Thank you, Director Frame. We'll go right to Mayor Alcock and then Councilor Remick.
Thank you very much for that, Chair Morrison. And Reba, thank you for this report. I love the fact that you continue to work on streamlining, similar to the previous comments. I do have, and I like it. So one question though is that you have to apply in the same calendar year. So I get it. I do get it. I'm trying to, though, look at, let's say, a situation where it's difficult to plan sometimes if you don't know if you have available funding. But I also hear you need to pony up your own funding too. It can't all be 100%. I get that as well. See, they couldn't do that. So which might prohibit whatever organization it is from actually organizing that event for whatever reason. Is that something that you've thought through? That how that might work if you were thinking about a few months ahead and it goes into the next year?
So through you, Chair Morrison, I think that is something that we chatted about, and I think that it would be kind of a special consideration type of situation where, you know what, reach out to us ahead of time. You might not be able to submit an application, but reach out to us and give us a heads up that you're looking for this funding. And it is sort of a, when we open it up and open the application up, it's kind of, we don't know how many applications we're going to get. So we can't necessarily say, yeah, 100%, you know, we're going to give the funding. It also is based on community benefit. And if an event is wholly reliant on getting that $1,500 from the town, like maybe we can work with other community partners and how we can help them figure out how to have that event without being reliant on the town. Right? So we can absolutely work with community groups because we want these events to happen, right? So I don't think there's anything in the policy limiting us from having those discussions with community groups and making things happen.
Okay, follow up.
Just a brief follow-up, and thank you for that. I appreciate it. So maybe what the response is for those who might be, and I'm not saying there are a ton, but if there was, and it was a good community event, that by reaching out beforehand, having a discussion, and then saying, submit your application in January, or right away in the beginning of the new year, right, or something. Okay, that helps. Thank you.
I think that's a great question just to follow too. I think this is a good policy. If for some reason we find we're running into that a lot, Director Frame can always look at changing intake dates and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's very valid because we know people organize ahead of time, right? So, Councilor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Morrison, and thank you for the report, Riva. Now, we did discuss this at the Corporate Services Committee meeting that we had, and it's, I guess, in regard to the fact that there are community groups that would apply for something every year because they're community groups. And but I think that's taken care of through the MOUs that we have with community groups like the Huntsville Festival of the Arts or the BIA or the Chamber of Commerce. So we don't want to say that this policy is going to stop people from applying because we've already got agreements with them, right? So there's those very valuable partners that we have that we don't, that may come and ask for waiving of fees. But would they still have to do that then? If it's through the MOU, they may not have to, correct? Yeah.
So through you, Chair Morrison, absolutely. So through several of our MOUs, we do have, and like Amanda just presented, we do have agreements that have waived fees sort of built into those. So those agreements may have to come back to council when they're up for renewal. But they wouldn't necessarily, the community group wouldn't necessarily have to come back every year. So those are definitely things that we're on the lookout for. So, Huntsville Festival of the Arts is one of them. We have an agreement with them. So absolutely, we look at how we can support all of our community groups and our community partners.
Great, thank you. And obviously, if there's a special situation that really needs attention, you could bring something to council if need be. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this motion? Okay, seeing that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Okay. We are going to move forward to 6.5.6, and Suzanne Diller is coming down. Regarding report number Corp 2025-12, amendment to fees and charges bylaw 2024-107, Schedule C1 MHP admissions and Schedule B1 leisure. And I do have a motion that is moved by Councillor Renwick and seconded by Councillor Schumacher, that it is recommended that the amendments to fees and charges bylaw 2024-107 as attached to report Corp 2025-12 be approved, and further that the bylaw be forwarded to council for approval. I'll pass it over.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. I'm here today to present the report, like Chair Morrison said, to recommend two changes to two different schedules. The first one for leisure is to clarify that the discount for the goalie pass is to be effective in 2025. And then the second is to include an addition of a family regular season pass for MHP. These items were last brought forward, I believe, in September. So they're just amendments from that last amendment.
Thank you very much. Pretty self-explanatory. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you, Suzanne. Get the easy one today. Okay, I think we're about halfway done. I'm going to do this one, and then we're going to have a bathroom break so the chipmunk can use the bathroom. So we'll see how that goes. Just can't last much longer. And so does Councillor Schumacher. So we're now moving on to 6.5.7, and I'll make it more formal now. Director McKenzie is going to report on report number Corp 2025-13, Budget Matters Excluded Expenses 2025. And I do have a motion that is moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. It is recommended that committee approve the excluded expenses from the Town of Huntsville 2025 approved budget as outlined in Corp 2024-56 and approved through motion 222-24. I'll pass it on to Director McKenzie.
Thank you very much. I'll make this very short. So this is a requirement of the Municipal Act when we pass our budget to show the difference between how we budget for things and how things will end up in our financial statement. So the biggest difference is our investment in Lakeland Holdings, the revenue, the amortization. I did just want to point out that usually we do say that we consume our assets more with the amortization more than we put into it. So that's our budget or what we've actually spent in expenses. Last year was the flip, or this year was the flip side, or last year was the flip side because we actually spent a lot more in 2024, but that was because of the delay in projects from 23. So we did have bigger spending in 24, but that was kind of a combination of 23, 24. So that is why it's flipped this year. So we would expect that it goes back to normal in prior years.
Okay, before we get into this, I'm gonna ask Director McKenzie just to, that last part about the amortization and the expense, if you explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old a little bit more, just for some, because I know it goes over our heads a little bit, and it's the world you live in every day. So if you can just maybe delve into that a little bit more.
For amortization of expense, that is kind of the cost that we consume of all of our assets each year. So you take the total value of the asset, divide it by the number of years that you'd have it, and that's your amortization expense for the year. Pardon me?
And that's something that you're writing down over the years?
Yep, so that's recorded in our financial statements. In our budget, we replenish our assets. So we would budget to add to our assets. So that's like our capital expense. So you really do want your capital expense to be higher than your amortization, because your amortization is basically what you're consuming, and then your capital expense is what you're replacing. So you want your replacement to be higher than your amortization, which we're typically not, and we know that. And that's just us trying to build up our asset management strategy. Does that make sense?
That makes more sense for me. Yeah, absolutely. We're still not where you are with it, but that's okay. That's okay. Any questions on this motion at all? Okay, seeing that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you, Director McKenzie, and we'll do a 5-minute bathroom break. Okay, and welcome back to General Committee. We are going to get back at it. We do have a bunch of items left to go, but we've done it in a reasonable time. We are going to move to 6.5.8, and we're going to have Clerk Kalea speak to report number Corp 2025-6, 2026 municipal election voting method. And I do have a motion moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. It is recommended that committee approve the use of internet and telephone voting for the 2026 municipal election and directs the clerk to prepare a bylaw for council's consideration. With that, I'll pass it off.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So this report is dealing with the 2026 municipal election. I know that seems maybe far away, but in our world, it's closer than you think. This report is a Muskoka Clerk's report. We combine together and each of us go and do this report together. You can see that Bracebridge and Gravenhurst have gone so far first, and the rest will be following shortly after me. This report is so we can get going on the bylaw. The bylaw has to be passed with the method in order for us to put our RFP out, which we are all anxious to do in the Muskoka Clerk, for the Muskoka Clerk. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, perfect. Any questions on this? It's fairly straightforward. I don't think anyone's going to not want it. Seeing no questions, I'm going to call a question. All in favor? That passes unanimously. And for the next item on the agenda, I'm going to pass off to my co-chair, Councillor Renwick, to take the chair.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So we are moving on to item is on here, but what is it? 6.5.9. 6.5.9. Thank you. Thank you. And I will read it is moved by Bob Stone and seconded by Councillor Schumacher. It is recommended that the draft election sign bylaw attached as Schedule B to Report Corp 2025-7 be approved, and further that the amendment to the Fees and Charges Bylaw 2024-107 to include a new fee of $50 per sign for the removal of signs found in violation of the election sign bylaw be approved, and further that both bylaws be presented to Council for consideration. That is the motion, and are there any questions in regard to that? Or let's have a discussion first.
Thank you, Vice Chair Renwick. I have Manager Nagy here with me today because his team and I work closely together during the election for this bylaw. There are a few changes that are new to this bylaw that Mr. Nagy can answer any questions on probably better than I because he's more familiar, hence the AMPS portion. So I just wanted to highlight 4 key areas where we really made some changes. Now, I know the bylaw looks like it's a little crazy with all the red line, but basically we have taken the bylaw and thrown it up in the air and put it back together. That's why ours looks so convoluted, but it actually isn't. It's just we've moved sections around and made it, the final version, much easier to follow and read. So the definitions are a key component, and definitions are being changed as per some of the changes in the bylaw that we're recommending. The second thing is we have a procedure for the removal of election signs, should we have to do that. It was in there before, but not a procedure of how it will come about. The third thing is no longer will signs be allowed on public property, only private property. And the fourth thing is we're changing from a set fine under the Provincial Offences Act to our AMPS program, which we have. So those are the 4 major changes to the bylaw. I know that Bracebridge and Gravenhurst so far has passed theirs. This bylaw is again a Muskoka Clerk's bylaw together. We're going together on this. The more we do together, the easier it is for candidates as well as staff. So this is the second bylaw that we're doing all together. We all have election sign bylaws, but this is one that we've now combined and we're going together on. Our current election sign bylaw, in effect, came about in 2018. We were following the regular sign bylaw that's still in place. Mr. Nagy has it still in place for everything else minus election signs. So in 218, we came forward and that's in place now, and we're asking a new one to be in place for this coming 2026 election.
Thank you for that, Clerk Kalea. I'm sure there will be questions around the table, so I will take questions at this point. Councillor Stone.
Thanks very much. So I agree and I disagree with this. So yeah, the signs on public property are a visual ugliness for a short period of time. And the signs themselves are not recyclable, which is problematic. I think about the person that wants to run and doesn't have a platform from which to say, hey, I'm running. But they'd probably be great, and they don't have a place to let everybody know who they are and where to find them. I don't know. I don't know what prompted this, except for the desire to not have signs everywhere. But I worry about the first time person running and how they're going to let the people know that they're putting their name forward.
Councillor, Your Worship. I am so sorry. Your Worship. Your Worship. Please.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair Renwick. So I feel, when I first saw that we were dealing with this, I had exactly the same reaction as Councillor Stone. I get the reasons. I absolutely, the whole environmental thing, it's really drives me nuts. And yes, it's clutter, but this is kind of one of those moments. It's almost emotional. It's democracy, right? And seeing all of the signs out there, and that it's all part and parcel of the process. But on the plus side to this amendment, I think there's a lot. One, I love the fact it's collaboration with the other municipalities. I like the consistency, the fact that Gravenhurst and Bracebridge are already out the gate. Those are, comparable municipalities, same issues. And the others are just falling in line soon. I also think that it could decrease costs for a campaign because signs are expensive. And so, you see your competitors and they have lots of signs, so you got to get lots of signs out there. But the fundamental thing I had with this was exactly what Councillor Stone said. I think if you are the first time out the gate, and clearly there are some candidates who just happen to have name recognition just because of who they are. And you're someone that's kind of new to the area or whatever, and you're keen, and I appreciated the comments in here about stats show it doesn't really, there isn't any correlation to success, but there's part of me that I can't help but think that just seeing the name, and if you, let's say, decide to run across the entire district, so a district for the first time, but you're from a particular location. So you're well known in one area, but not in the rest of the municipality. And I don't know, maybe that's just, it's a gut reaction, it's emotional. I wasn't sure how I was going to vote on this because of that. I wondered if there was a way that, and I think there was some discussion in the report about having designated public areas, like one area that's going to be, full of signs, so you see them. But then I think, well, I don't know how valuable that is. I think at the end of the day, if it's a decision of this council that this makes a lot of sense, I think I would support that. But I'm just putting it on the table as to my little inkling, which follows what Councillor Stone said.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair. I echo a lot of the same comments just made, but I understand the clutter it can create in summertime when we have all our visitors coming and every corner is cluttered with signs. So I can definitely understand that and how messy it can actually look. Well, I just wonder if there's any room or wiggle room for council here that if we come up with a date, say like, just throwing it out there, October 1 to election day, you're allowed to place signs in certain areas on public land. So that at least gives you an opportunity to still get some signs out there. But anyhow, it's just a thought I had. So.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Renwick. And so here's my thoughts on the signs. I agree with a lot of the comments that we've heard here today, and we want to make sure that we don't give an unfair advantage to an incumbent over anybody. That's the key, because it's important a newcomer running in an election has every opportunity to get their name out there. Allowing signs on private property only is a good option, but again, I think it gives the incumbent a bit of an unfair advantage. So I like Deputy Mayor Armour's idea. I think I'd be more open to allowing signs on private property and only allowing election signs on public property for a short period of time, whether that's October or from Thanksgiving to the election, but keep it a short period of time. I think that election signs still play a role, and I don't want to see a policy that would put a newcomer at a disadvantage, because we need to make sure that new candidates aren't discouraged. That's part of how we keep council fresh and new ideas, and that's very important, I think.
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to have a bit of a different slant on this. Personally, I feel if you're depending on signs to get you elected, you maybe shouldn't run. This day and age, saying there's no platform, social media reaches many more people for way less environmental cost and way less financial cost. We're not banning signs, and I apologize when you say, where did this start? It started, I approached Crystal when she was still here because I was embarrassed at how many signs I had out last election. And they're sitting in my garage right now. They're going to the landfill at some point. And we talk about the methane gas stuff coming from landfill, and we can't say we have environmental targets, and then say, hey, put up these big signs. This talk about the stats saying there's no real correlation. We have real world examples right in our district. Last election, Councillor Sutherland and Councillor Rhodes ran, first-time councillors. Councillor Rhodes was well known in the community. Councillor Sutherland was not. She didn't know anybody. They beat two incumbents. They beat two incumbents by knocking on doors. And to me, this is hard. Being on council is hard. And if you're going to run and want to serve the community, you got to put the work in. Knocking on doors is how you get your signs up. It's how you get your platform out. There's nothing about a sign that says how good you're going to be as a councillor. It doesn't say what your platform is, who you want to serve, and what you want to do. Nothing about it does. The stuff that serves is getting your platform out there through social media, mail outs, knocking on doors. I see no reason, I personally would like to see no signs at all, but that's not ever going to win. I also want to look at the idea of having a size restriction, because even from the 1st of October to the election date, it's still fall. People are coming off from all over the world to see our colors. And they drive by and keep in mind, this is for federal, provincial, and municipal, right? So it's not just for us. I don't think there's, Councillor Clark is bang on. I don't want any incumbent to ever have an advantage over a newcomer. But the newcomers are sometimes a bit more aggressive in social media and getting out there and getting their messages out and coming with new ideas. And if you have new ideas, that's what's going to resonate with the public. And sometimes we have a disadvantage just because the public's mad at us, right? And so I don't see any advantage for the incumbent just based on signs. I'd like to see it limited to 10 square feet per sign. And I think this makes so much sense, especially because it's happening all over the district. Well, 10, I think whatever, 3 by 3, whatever it is, the normal size of a sign. Because do you want to give an advantage to someone who just has a lot of money and can buy the biggest signs in town and can put them all out there? That's not a fair advantage. That's an economic disadvantage to those that just want to run and have the right platform but can't afford signs. So if we want to talk about an advantage, that's one. So I love this. I think it should be in place, and I think it makes so much sense. That's my thoughts.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Renwick. Great conversation, and I keep flip-flopping if someone else has another opinion, which I don't do very often. Strong, valid points. So is our mandate to streamline the process and eliminate staff time and efforts to monitor the signs, collect the signs, or is it for people visiting that aren't cluttered with signs? So for me, I don't know how to weigh those out, but good points, and your point is what threw me over the edge, is I'm kind of okay with the policy, the way it's been presented.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you. I know I'm going for the second time around, and I'm echoing a little bit of what Councillor Fitzgerald just said, because Councillor Morrison, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, for me, a practical experience, door to door is the best way. And when you go door to door, you're distributing your campaign literature. And so there's the name recognition. So I think your point is absolutely well taken there. And you're right on the environmental stuff. It drives me crazy to see signs that you've paid a lot of money for and they're not recyclable. And it just, so it pains me to see that. So I think, and also the use of social media. While I dislike social media, I know how important it is during an election. So for all of those reasons, I just swayed right back, and I would support this policy.
Councillor Cluche.
Through you. I like this simple fact that you can still get signs out. Not a whole lot, but that's fine. But I mean, our day and age, social media is the big thing, and boots on the ground is going to get you to win the race. So, I mean, I don't think we got to clutter every road and everything like we normally do. I think I had 110 just in Burnell Ward, and that's excessive, I think. But like I said, social media and boots on the ground is going to win you, not a sign on the front yard.
Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through you. Yeah, I'm kind of like Councillor Fitzgerald. I was kind of weighing back and forth. I kind of liked the idea of just limiting it to October, but I do see Councillor Morrison's points there. My question, though, is so on private property, there isn't a limit on how many signs that person could put up. Is there a limit? That's what I thought I read too, but I couldn't find it. So if they could only do like ward or district or mayor, they can't put signs for any of those, all of those candidates on, correct?
Clerk Clea.
Thank you. It's per position.
Yeah, that's my misunderstanding. So then they could have 5 signs because they could have 3 district, 1 mayor, and will neighbors be complaining about neighbors? I guess. It might happen anyway.
Mr. Nagy.
That's a great point. And, you know, with respect to kind of complaints and what we've seen in the past, if I can kind of touch base on that. So the current bylaw doesn't enable you to put any sign on boulevards, right? So that was the biggest thing that we were responding to. So, you know, Center Street and that median that goes through is technically a boulevard. And then anything that was adjacent to Center Street between the sidewalk is technically a boulevard as well, right? So any candidate signs that were in that area, we did have to respond to, you know, get them relocated, right? It wasn't necessarily we're going to go by and pick them all up and everything. I just want to kind of make that clear, because when you're talking about those public spaces, that main section down in that area generally isn't useful for a candidate from what we've seen, because they're behind the sidewalk, which is roughly about 15 feet away from the road once it's in compliance, right? So if that kind of helps out with the whole, you know, public property as opposed to private property entities, those are kind of the biggest responses that we had in a bylaw complaint aspect to kind of bring that to light, right? So you kind of say, hey, we can't even use that corridor anyway. It might kind of narrow the vision of where you can actually put it in the private property entity, which obviously our clerk is bringing forward. So,
Sorry, to follow up.
So, sorry, and Councillor Morrison said this will affect all elections. So like all the signs I saw coming in that are provincial right now would necessarily be removed. Is that correct?
Clerk Kalea.
If you're talking about the provincial election today, it will be under the current bylaw. So this, if should committee approve this today, the bylaw still has to come to council, which would be February 24th. So the writ was dropped yesterday, I believe. So we're already in under the 218 bylaw for the current provincial election.
Okay, and then so follow up to what Mr. Nagy was saying. So like those areas, I'm thinking like Utterson, right before people would go up to vote. So that corner is public property and would not then be allowed signs under this new bylaw, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I floated the idea of making a sign size limitation. I think I'll pull that. Just thinking, telling people what they can and can't put on their lawn might not be the right way to go. And also to keep it consistent with all the work that the clerk has done with fellow clerks. But the two things I just want to point out that really are probably the two biggest reasons why I want to support this. The staff time that our clerk and bylaw spend on sign calls is going to go down significantly. And Clerk Leah can speak to it if she likes, but the amount of calls they get, the amount of time they put into dealing with this is insurmountable while they're also doing their full-time jobs. And the other thing is the public wants this. The public, as Clerk Leah will also tell you, the public wants this. So that's the reason the biggest reason why I want to get behind it.
And over to Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to say I think we're creating an unfair playing field for those people who aren't currently on council by this whole motion. All we're really going to do is make the media outlets a little richer by buying advertisements on there and having our signs slip through there, but just my opinion.
And Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. Couldn't agree more with Deputy Mayor Armour's comments, and I won't be supporting the motion. Matter of fact, I'd like to ask for a recorded vote on this. Thanks.
Councillor Stone.
Thanks very much. So, as I stated in the beginning, I do think it's a disadvantage to the unknown applicant or that someone who wishes to run. So I won't be voting in favor of this either. I do have a question for the clerk, though. So in the upcoming election, I know Elections Ontario will be putting directional signs on public property to direct the public to polling stations. Will that be allowed?
Kurt Kalea.
If I can clarify, do you mean the current provincial election what we're going through now? Is that, so we will be using the current bylaw, not this one, not this proposed one.
So when the federal election comes around, they will also be putting signs on public property directing the public to polling stations on our public boulevards. Will they not be allowed?
Any election sign for candidates will not be allowed on public property.
But from Elections Canada?
For candidates, yes. For
No, Elections Canada, who are directing people to polling stations. They will be
Candidate-
putting signs out saying
No,
the polling station this way.
No, candidate signs only, candidate signs only.
Okay.
This is what we're talking about for public property.
All right. Well, I do like the idea of limiting the time frame, whether it be 3 weeks. It would give the unknown candidates an equal advantage to those of us who have the advantage of already being on council and being incumbents.
All right, are there any more questions? A very healthy discussion. Thank you for that. Anyone else have any comments? The fact that it has been brought up that this would be a recorded vote, I guess I would turn to our clerk, to Jessica. Is that something that you would do, Jessica? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Alcock,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Armour,
Nay.
Councillor Clark,
No.
Councillor Cloutier,
Yes.
Councillor Fitzgerald, Councillor Morrison,
Yes.
Councillor Schumacher,
Yes.
Councillor Stone,
No.
Counselor Renwick,
Yes.
and that carries.
And yes, that carries. Thank you.
Sorry.
I just wanted to say that too, but thank you. I will now turn the chair back over to Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Co-Chair Renwick, for taking over. Makes you feel like less of a burden. I don't have as many items. Okay, we're going to go to 6.5.10, Director Frame. Report number Corp 2025-10, 2022 to 2026 term of council midterm report, and this is for information only.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So this report is for information only, but I did want to elaborate a little bit on it for the public that are watching. So it provides a look back over the last 2 years of the 2022 to 2026 term of council. So really, we're outlining the key strategic successes that have occurred so far this term of council. So you'll notice in the report that the key strategic areas do not necessarily tie to our current strategic plan, although they are similar. Really, that's because we didn't have the strategic plan finalized until early 2024. So it wasn't actually effective throughout the entire term of council. So I won't go into specific details about each individual project, but I did want to highlight a few of the projects in the key strategic areas that are noted. So under administration and governance, we had the adoption of the new strategic plan, entering into and enhancing shared service agreements, and the adoption of the first multi-year budget in Huntsville. So those were big key strategic successes. In communication, there was the completion of the community branding and wayfinding strategies and the development of a communication strategy. There were leaps forward in community partnerships, including the signing of the Muskoka Area Indigenous Leadership Table Friendship Accord, and the creation of the Community Recognition Awards program. Improvements in community safety included investment in the Summit Center security, and an expansion in fire prevention, public education, and trauma support. Through environment and climate projects, some of those projects included the regional climate adaptation and the corporate climate mitigation plans, along with the approval of a home energy retrofit program that is expected to launch in 2026. Support for healthcare was a big one, including the helping getting the health clinic at the annex off the ground, physician recruitment, and developing a plan for the local the hospital local share. A housing needs assessment was also completed, along with continued partnership and the commitment to the creation of the affordable housing development off of Florin Street. And lastly, there's been significant improvement in accessibility awareness, accessibility education, and through our facilities and programming throughout the town. So there are other projects included in Appendix A, quite a few other projects, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Director Frame. Any questions on that report? It's a lot of good information. I'll go to Mayor Alcock.
I don't have a question. Thank you, Chair Morrison. And I'm saving my questions for the next report on the corporate action plan, but it was great reading this report. I just, you're not surprised to hear this, but highlighting all of the various things that this council has done is a bit of a mind blower, actually. So thank you for all of the work you do.
Thank you. And I'm going to go over to CEO Corey.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So often we don't focus on the accomplishments and we just look at the list of things that is still yet to be done. I've heard it from staff, I've heard it from members of council. What have we really accomplished? Well, when we reviewed the list, it's no wonder we're slightly exhausted because there's a ton of stuff on that list. And I think the reason a lot of those projects got done was because we had very clear direction from this council, which made it easier to complete those projects, not easy time-wise, but easier to complete the projects. And we appreciate the clear direction that we're receiving. So we look forward to the next 2 years. Thank you.
Yeah, and I second that. And I think in the future, Director Frame, you should call this the council and staff midterm report because what we've accomplished together as a team. And it's been really, really great. Okay, that was information only, so there is no motion. So we'll move on to Item 6.5.11, and we're having Director Frame speak to report number Corp 2025-11, the Corporate Action Plan. And I do have a motion moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Cluche, that it is recommended that the Corporate Action Plan, as attached to report Corp 2025-11, be adopted. And I'll hand it over to Director Frame.
So thank you again, Chair Morrison. So the last report provided a look back over the last 2 years of council. This report is providing a look forward. So we're outlining recommended projects or initiatives to address the town's strategic plans, goals, including some proposed timelines. So a corporate action plan really is just another word for a business plan. And it provides specific actions that can be taken or projects that will help the town achieve the strategic plan goals and initiatives. Currently on the proposed corporate action plan, there are 91 projects, and it is attached to the report. So some of these projects, I think it's important to note, have already been completed, and some are already in progress, while others are things that we're planning to do moving forward. The projects were pulled from a number of different sources, so things including the council directives listing, legislation, like the asset management plan updates, implementation plans that have been approved by council as guiding documents. So these include plans from the 3 special purpose committees that we had running in 23 and 24. So as I noted in the report, these implementation plans included recommended projects. So some are on the corporate action plan as proposed today, while others are included on a centralized tracking sheet to make sure that we don't lose any of these recommendations. So these recommendations will help to populate future projects as resources become available. So the recommendations from the implementations plan may not have made it onto the corporate action plan yet for a number of different reasons. So generally speaking, though, it's largely either due to a lack of resources for that project or another project that's currently on the action plan needs to be done first. Or we just don't know yet when or if the project is even feasible. So until we assess that, it doesn't really make sense to say, yes, community, we are doing this project at this time. So I do think it's important to note that all of the implementation plan items from the Environment and Climate Change Committee plan are included on the proposed action plan. All but one recommendation from the Active Transportation and Public Transit Committee plan are included in the corporate action plan. And there are 17 recommendations from the Community Services Master Plan and Waterfront Strategy Committee that are included on the action plan. So there are several recommendations from that committee's action plan that aren't yet on this corporate action plan, but we are not losing sight of them. We are tracking them. And as we have the resources or as other projects come off the corporate action plan, we can add new ones on and they will come forward to council at that time. So of the 91 projects currently on the list, 22 have actually already been completed. 45 projects are in progress and 24 have not yet been started. The majority of those ones are projected to begin at some point in 2025 or 2026. So the next steps will be to create a public-facing dashboard to provide timely updates to the community on the progress of each of these projects. So this will include all the details that are shown in the corporate action plan as attached to the report, along with the responsible and the supporting departments, any progress notes, and any key performance indicators for that specific project. So essentially, this is like the council directives list, which is actually incorporated into this already, as I mentioned. So as new council directives are added, they'll be added to the corporate action plan. Ultimately, we shouldn't have any council directives or projects that don't support strategic initiatives going forward, or projects that are specifically supported by legislation. As I mentioned, the asset management plan is a legislated thing, so you're going to continue to see that on the corporate action plan. And that's all I had to say. I'm available for questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Frame. I think I'm going to have Mayor Alcock for sure. She warned us. So.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. And I had a number of just comments, and a couple of questions. There's just one very quick one. There's a bit of, I think, a typo in the first one page with respect to salt usage review. You've got it starting Q1 2027 and ending in Q4 2024. So that
is a typo.
Yeah, which I'm assuming then it's 2027, right?
2027.
That we're looking at that. So that's good. I was a bit surprised to see the EV strategy in 2028 because I sort of assumed we were kind of having ongoing discussions with Lakeland, sort of on a regular basis. So is there a reason on that?
Maybe that's Kirsten. Director Maxwell, did you want to take that one?
Through you, at this time, we were looking at the other projects that are all being done through our climate coordinator. And so it's not to say it won't start earlier.
But it's
And if
not-
there are ongoing discussions, that is always in the works, but it's just that there's some other things that were thought to be priorities.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Probably the biggest one for me, I love all of the priorities. I love the fact you've got all of this on here, and I think, holy cow, we got a lot to do. But, and I thank everybody for being part of that. So the big one, though, is on Florence Street development. Really happy to see, starting Q4 2021, which is true, and ending Q4 2025, which I'm assuming is a shovel is in the ground or something like that. So where there's the second part of the question, which is if I look to the communications tower survey, it's showing it's not started, and it's showing completion Q4 2025. And as far as I understand, we can't actually continue with the Florence Street project until we've dealt with that tower. So I don't understand the timing on that because that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
So absolutely, and I appreciate the comments. Sorry, through you, Chair Morrison. So with respect to the dates, they are not set in stone. And absolutely, we will look at that to make sure that, that this project is done first and then this one and kind of the dates align. So I think the Florence Street, the end date might be something we need to look at. And it could be that that's further down the road once the communication tower stuff is done.
Follow up?
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate the response, Reba. If I may, then this would be my request that I think the Florence Street project, I'll speak for myself, is a very high priority. And so if we're looking at this so that they align and it moves it out further, then I think that's a high priority. It's housing, housing, and housing. And there's a commitment. So if we could move the tower further up, that would be my request. And I don't know if I have support from council, but that's my comment.
Okay, and as far as process goes, if a member of committee wanted to amend a portion of your report, we could put a motion, an amendment to the motion on the floor, could we not? Yes, okay. So as we go around, if you decide you want to put that on there, that'd be good. Okay. And speaking of that, as this goes on, this is a long-term planning document. If at any point any committee member thinks that they want some dates changed, we're going to get updates from Director Frame throughout the process. We can always decide to look at dates and have a discussion. Director Frame, I think you're going to say something.
Yeah, so I just to clarify, so the approval of the corporate action plan really is approving the projects on the corporate action plan, not necessarily the timelines. So I think it's very clearly understood, as it has been through the council directives process, that the Florence Street development and housing is absolutely a priority. So the sooner we can make that happen, the sooner we will make it happen. So it's essentially what's in the appendix to the report with respect to the dates is really just a target sort of date. It's not that you're approving that date necessarily.
Yeah, so the
Because
dates aren't
things-
set in stone.
Oh, sorry, things come up and things change, right? So.
Okay, and I'll go over to our CAO.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So the intent of the report today is to show committee what staff have plotted for timeline based on other projects that are ongoing. I do think the Florence Street Tower one is something we do need to amend because we know that is top of mind and part of a larger project. But this is committee's opportunity to look at the plan, to tell us if you think there's something that needs to be moved up, and then we would take it back to our team to figure out what needed to be moved around to make that happen. So this plan that's presented today is based on day-to-day operations and where we feel with the existing resources that we can fit the projects in. I do think that particular one was an oversight though. So this is in fact your opportunity to say, well, you've got it in Q3 of 26 and we think it should be a higher priority, and then we would take that back and rejig the timeline. So this is in fact the opportunity for committee to say if they want things moved around.
And to that point, then you're getting a commitment from the majority of council to move in that direction.
Right,
Yeah,
correct.
which is why
Instead
Mayor
of
Alcock brought it up.
potentially an individual member of council having interest, if we
Yeah.
bring it to this table, it's a collective directive.
Okay,
So
yeah.
this is the time.
Okay. Councillor Renwick?
Thank you, Chair Morrison. And we did bring this up at the committee meeting as well, just in regard to what the mayor said about the salt usage review. And because of the dates being, it really should be 2025 to 2027 perhaps, because I think that is something, it's very topical right now, the salt usage that's happening in the province as well, and different towns and cities. So I would like to see that. It says 2024, let's say to 2027, but I would like to see that in 2025, obviously this year, to be started. So I don't know if anyone else would agree with that, but because it does say it hasn't been started, but it says it's 2024. So I would assume that it is. But let's move that to 2025, and then maybe it'll be started.
And I think to that point, when we had our agenda review, and I think the Public Works guys would be curious, part of that plan, of course, is having a salt dome, right? So, which we know is critical. So, okay. Councillor Stone?
I just quickly looked for it and didn't find it. Maybe it's somewhere, but the full implementation of our dark sky bylaw is in 2026. Is that on the list? I didn't see it. If not,
See you, Corey.
Everybody's looking around, so I'll start perhaps. So that is a previous directive that was approved by council. So in discussions with the team, it's my understanding that they are going to be working on a communication plan for that implementation. To your point, it is in effect 2026. So that was all part of a previous directive. I would have to ask Director Frame how she's capturing those directives, because this again focuses on our existing directives that we have, the plan that we have. So I'm not sure how those are being picked up.
So I don't think the dark sky lighting was actually on the council directives list previously, so I'll have to look into that one. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't here then, but I remember hearing about it, so. Councillor, Mayor Alcock.
The councillor,
I
the
guess
councillor,
we're all
councillor over
members.
here would like to speak.
We're all members today because it's a committee.
And
Yeah,
that's,
we're all
and,
members.
and I'm I'm an egalitarian, so that's all good. I just, to follow up on Councillor Stone's comment, I think absolutely it should be on there because 2026 that's the implementation date. That's the deadline. So clearly it should be identified.
I guess we could be putting, and see how Corey, I'll ask you or our clerk, the best way to do this is if there's 2 or 3 items here that we want, we could put a amendment forward or a motion forward.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So I just messaged the deputy clerk to say, how are we handling these amendments? So I do believe what we'll do is I've started to make a list, and I'm sure that the rest of the team is documenting it as well. So maybe having the conversation, then we can take a break and convene with Director Frame and the deputy clerk, and we'll finalize it all in a motion.
Okay, that sounds
So
great.
everybody is just taking notes.
Okay, and I think one other thing to mention about Mayor Alcock's comments about the tower, we also have a lot of work done by Ian saying that the state of the tower is not necessarily in good repair. So there's also that to consider when we're talking about timelines on that. Any other questions on this corporate action plan? Okay, so I think we have at the moment 2 items that want to be addressed. 3, dark sky friendly. Oh, the salt and the tower.
Yeah,
So do you
we
want to
just
take
have
5
debate.
minutes?
If that's the final discussion,
Yep,
absolutely.
that's the final discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
If we could have 5 minutes. That would
5
be
minutes, we'll come back with a motion. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome back to General Committee. We do have a motion prepared by our Deputy Clerk. And we're going to put it up on the screen, I assume.
I believe Director Frame would like to speak to one item.
Okay, perfect. Director Frame, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So the one item I wanted to talk about was the dark sky lighting project that Councillor Stone was mentioning. So we actually already have the dark sky lighting, the communication plan on our operational work plan for this year to make sure that we communicate that out to the community. So, you know, in consultation with the CAO and Councillor Stone, we're not planning on putting that on the amendment. But I wanted to let all of council know it is on the operational work plan for 2025 to get that done.
That makes sense. Okay. So now we'll move on towards the motion. It's coming through, I believe. Here it is. All right. So we have a motion moved by Mayor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Renwick. It is recommended that the corporate action plan as attached to report Corp 2025-11 be adopted with the following amendments in Appendix A. And that is 1.2, project number 35, salt usage review. We're changing the target dates to Q1 2025 to Q4 2025. And 2.1, project number 80, the communication tower survey, status in progress. So I'll have CEO Corey speak to that.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So just for clarification with the communication tower, the reason it had stated not started is because we actually can't do the geotechnical studies until the spring. So in our mind, thinking that it hasn't started, but it has started the process. So we have just amended it to reflect that accordingly.
And then I'm sure there will be reports coming back to us and we'll be moving as quick as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, so any questions or comments on this motion? Don't see any. Call the question. All in favor? That carries. Some good amendments. That's great.
Sorry, Councillor Chair Morrison, can
Yes.
you call the main as amended?
Oh, can I call the main motion as amended? All those in favor? Yeah. And thank you, Deputy Clerk, for keeping us on our toes. Feels like that's my whole life, people making sure I'm in order. We are moving forward to, sounds like Margaret's coming down. So we are looking to Margaret Stead coming in to talk about report number Corp 2025-2, the town-owned land working group 2024 summary. And I do have a motion on this. Do you want me to read everything? Yeah, probably. Okay. All right. Moved by Deputy Mayor Armour and seconded by Mayor Alcock, whereas, I don't. Oh, great.
The motion is as in the agenda.
Perfect. It's going to save you guys my monotone drone. So the motion is as in the agenda, and we'll have Margaret speak to it.
Thank you, through you, Chair Morrison. First, I just wanted to do a thank you to all the working group members for the staff and council members as part of this project. It was great, and we made some good progress that you'll see here. Just to highlight briefly, the categories and definitions, our step for that will be a new municipal land management policy. So that'll include all of those definitions and categories. The goal of that will streamline the terminology that we use in our strategic plan documents, different parks master plans, waterfront strategy, and even into asset management and operational plans, how we define and use all of our land pieces. The terminology will be streamlined, as well as our inventory database, so the GIS mapping component of that. The new policy will also outline that the working group will continue as a staff working group, and it'll be ongoing. So we won't have these kind of gaps in town-owned property reviews. It'll be a continuous ongoing goal to review the land and municipal needs now and into the future. Land is finite, and we are good stewards of the land, so it's important to have that ongoing. You'll see through the report different sections, trails, some small parcels offered to a budding owner, parcels to be categorized as future park and further consideration in the 2025 Parks Master Plan. One parcel to be reviewed for stormwater and trail use, and then a final amendment, I'll use the word amendment if that's correct, to allocate funds through the Parks Reserve on a sale of property if and when it is sold, that those proceeds, revenue goes to the Park Reserve to help benefit Parks and Recreation in that area. As you can see, the report includes the screenshots of all the mapping of all the parcels and highlighted there in red. So I just briefly highlighted on all of those and sharing that with the group and the lengthy their recommendations. So happy to answer any questions.
All right, we have questions, Deputy Mayor Armour.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Morris. A quick one on the declared surplus land that we're just basically giving to the neighbor. Is there cost associated with that if they have to do surveys again to assume that piece of property?
That is a great question through you, Chair Morrison. We'll work through our acquisition and disposition policy through our legal and agreements coordinator. Some of those properties may already have a survey done, and that'll be part of that process. She'll bring those forward in a separate report. We'll gauge the interest of the abutting landowners if there's interest there. That would be the first step in that.
Great question. Mayor Alcock and then Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. And I just want to thank you, Margaret, and the entire working group, and that's including, I think, Councillor Stone and Morrison, you were involved in that. It was so great, you know, finally seeing the product of all of the work that's gone into it. And I absolutely support the proposed recommendation. I just, again, the work that you're doing in GIS and the database that you've collected, Margaret, is unbelievably great. So much so, at our most recent meeting with Ontario Hydro at Roma, I think we were the only group that we were prepared with our big maps. And so we walked in with our big maps. And they actually kept one of ours because they wanted to see what we were showing. And so I just think the things that you're working on are really great for the municipality. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mayor Alcock. I second that. And over to Councillor Fitzgerald.
Mayor always takes the words right out of my mouth, okay? I had a question or query about town-owned property ID number 273 and 274. We don't have any dimensions or sizes or whether it's road access or not, but if we do end up changing our lot requirements, does that now fit into a different category?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Morrison. That's a great question. I'll just highlight for the group, looking on our note there, 273 and 274. They're two small abutting pieces on North Menominee Lake Road, across from the Tucker Lake Road intersection, to put that in perspective. I don't have all the measurements offhand. Even on the mapping, if you do look at the mapping, obviously, please note through the disclaimer of the impact data, it's not survey accurate. And this is an area where that would be relevant. You can see that clearly. So currently we're sell to a budding owner because we, through planning review, didn't feel it would meet that criteria.
Sorry, through you, Chair, given the light that we do have pending changes coming through for requirements of lot size and frontage, maybe we should put this one pending that change. Just thinking about future revenues for the municipality, that's all.
I think that's a great point because what we're coming out of our working group is trying to maximize return for the town. So that fits into that, Councillor Fitzgerald, and maybe Margaret can take that into the committee or to the group. Yep. Great point. Any other questions on this? I'll just do a final chat about it because Councillor Stone and I were fired from the group. Just want to acknowledge the time we did have there. And I think it's the right move. This is perfect. Staff knows what they're doing, but I think Bob would 100% concur. It was a great group. It was really professional. The knowledge we had around the table from Marie Turner to Lee Ecclestone to Madeline Albano to Margaret, of course. Am I missing anybody, Margaret?
Lee, we're
I said Lee, yeah. So anybody I'm missing, I'm sorry, but I remember being at those meetings and any question Bob and I would have, we got answers within like a second. The institutional knowledge was so good and everybody's pulling in the right direction. So I really enjoyed our time working together. It was great. Lots of fun. Councillor Stone?
Yeah, so I would concur. And Scott and I wanted to be part of this so we could find those little pieces of land that maybe we could get some extra housing in. But there's little pieces that are not really usable to anybody that we're selling off to, the neighboring properties for the most part. But there's no hidden gems that we're missing out on.
I'm going to go to Councillor Remick and then Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. And just to reiterate what Councillor Stone said, finding those little hidden gems, but I think the fact that we found, or that you found, existing properties that are there, like the one that's on 73 Center Street South, we've always, the community has always used that as a pathway from Center Street to Anthony Court. So to make it now official that it's going to be there and that maybe we'll maintain it as well. And obviously working with the district, that was a great thing. So thank you for that too. And the other one was on the Burrows Lane, I think it's called a Burrow Lane. That's the one that's off of Main Street that goes beside Hunters Bay Radio. Happy to see that that will be taken over and perhaps used as parkland or as a trail, because again, so many people use that to get from Main Street down to, the other housing back there. So really great report, but thank you for the work that you've done and committee.
Thank you, Councillor Renwick, and over to Mayor Alcock.
Councillor Renwick stole the words right out of my mouth, because I was going to say of equal importance was the identification of missing links on our trail development. So this is exactly what this is doing, and that's really exciting.
And keep in mind, Councillor Stone is right. We didn't find that hidden gem, but we did shift a bit of focus. We're looking at potential road allowances that will never be used. I think Lake of Bays recently is doing a housing project on a strip of road allowance. And so we're not going to stop. Staff's not going to stop trying to find land that can be put towards housing. That's for sure. Any other questions or comments on that motion? Okay, well, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries. And I get to finally pass the chair back over to Mayor Alcock.
Okay, so we do not have a closed session, and therefore we don't have business arising from a closed session either, which leaves only one more motion, and that it has been moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Schumacher. It is recommended that we do now adjourn at 11:58 a.m. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Imagine before.